and captions are enabled too. So hopefully anyone who needs those is able to see the captions. And we'll go ahead and get started. So thank you everyone for being here. I'm Debbie Braun. I am the Assistant Vice Provost for University Honors as one of my roles, one of the areas that I oversee in that role. I also oversee a new honors program called the Hoffman Honors Scholars Program, but we are here today to talk about University Honors. I've been in this role for about 20 years, which is wild, and it's wonderful. And favorite part of that role has been working with faculty who teach classes for us and who engage in research and other opportunities to mentor our students. And so I'm excited to meet you all and for you all to be here today. And I will turn it over to Teresa Cully for Teresa to introduce herself to you as well.
Hello, everyone. I'm Teresa. As Debbie had mentioned, I'm a professor in biological sciences. I've been working with honors. Debbie, I was thinking about this. I think it's been at least 10 years. And so it's also really fun for me to do this with Debbie. We've done this for a number of different years. I also, in full transparency, teach an honors class as well right now. So let's just go ahead and get started.
Yeah, and so I will give you all an overview of the University Honors Program, and Teresa will provide an overview of the Honors Seminar proposal process as well as Honors Seminars, and our faculty panelists will give you an in-depth in-depth experience into the Honors Seminar courses that they teach. So the University Honors Program, this is our vision to develop students into global citizen scholars who lead innovative efforts towards solving our world's complex problems. And it's up here behind me. This is the wall in our student reception area. I'm in my office, but this is a nice picture that I took. Everything that we do comes back to this vision. It's our North Star. It's the backbone of our program. And when I say that, it's everything with students, with faculty, within our team. We don't define global citizen scholars for our students or for anyone. We want our students to define that for themselves, and we work with them to do that. In addition, thinking about innovation and solving complex problems and what are the world's most complex problems, we want students to think about that and identify that for themselves. Who am I? What am I interested in? What do I want to be engaged in while I'm here at UC and after? And what does that look like and mean? And so that is a window into our vision. And then our mission, how do we do that? How do we approach that? It's all the highlighted pieces that you see here. We're an individualized student-centered program. Everything that we do is about that individual student, who they are, what they want to do, how they want to engage, and how they want to move through their honors experiences. What are their interests? What are their passions? We are very deeply focused, as most of us at UC are, in experiential learning. And through University Honors, students engage in deep critical reflection on that learning. And Teresa and our faculty panelists will talk more about the reflection piece. The sense of community and providing students with a scholarly community where they have a sense of belonging is very important to us. And we focus deeply on that community. And we hope that you build community within your honors seminar courses. And inclusion is also critical, and leading with inclusion and having inclusive learning experiences within anything a student is doing in university honors, and especially honors seminars, is important. And so that is actually a piece of the proposal process, talking with us and sharing a little bit about how you make your honor seminar, how you will make your honor seminar an inclusive learning environment. And another piece of how we go about doing this is by having a large interdisciplinary, cross-disciplinary student enrollment population of students. This snapshot gives you a window into our student enrollment across the colleges. It's generally reflective of the size of UC's colleges, with engineering and arts and sciences having the largest population. We are a bit overrepresented in the College of Medicine because those students are so drawn to the UHP's vision in ways and larger percentages than other students are, and that the nature of their academic community. So overrepresentation there. And then it gets a little generally more representative as you look at the rest of that pie chart with the other colleges. And we are also working to balance our enrollment as UC has grown significantly over the past few years, especially the past 5 years. We're balancing some of those numbers as well. We typically land around 1,400 students in the program at any given time. And I think it's also good and helpful for you to know that we enroll our students in two different ways. One is through incoming first semester, first year students, and we enroll around 300 of those students each fall. And then we invite around 150 current UC students to join the program every year between fall and spring semester. And we call that our transition admissions process. And that process is opening up in the next couple of weeks. So if you know a current UC student that this fits and they may not be in our program, they can apply to transition into it and join us in the spring. So that's some helpful information about our profile. And after I'm done talking, I will add in the chat our profile report. I added that before we started, but I'm not sure if folks who joined, who we admitted later, will be able to see it. I don't think you can. So I'll re-add our profile reports from last fall semester and this past spring semester, and you can get an even better window into our enrollment and what that looks like. This framework is helpful for faculty to see as you're thinking about engaging with us and developing honors seminar courses as well. This shares a little bit more about how we're different as an honors program. We're quite different from most honors programs that you find that are often focused on students doing harder work for the sake of it. We don't have a checklist of things that students have to do. It's about finding meaning and purpose and deeper learning in what students are doing as part of their major, as hobbies, experiences, whatever it is that they're doing. It's diving into that. We want students to take risks, to take an honor seminar course outside of their major, outside of what they normally would do, outside of what they already know. We want them to have a community where they can jump into that and do that, apply their knowledge and skills across disciplines with each other. One of the greatest benefits that students often tell us about of honor seminars is that they jump into them, take them with students and faculty from disciplines that they otherwise would not have that exposure to. So it's a wonderful opportunity for them and for you all, hopefully, too. And what our honors experience is then, to make it a little bit more concrete. Our enrollment numbers may have made it concrete, but everything else I'm talking about is pretty big picture. So to graduate from the university honors program, students are required to complete 5 honors experiences, in addition to having a 3.2 cumulative UC GPA and to complete a 1 credit hour gateway to the university honors class that our advising team teaches. That gateway class talks with them about who are you as a global citizen scholar? What does that mean to you? Students create learning portfolios that Teresa will mention upcoming in a little bit, and do a number of other things in there. So honor seminars is one type of honors experience. We're here to talk about that, and we'll get into that shortly. The other 2 types of honors experiences that I want to share with you briefly are pre-approved experiences and self-designed experiences. And those are, in that sense, those are somewhat self-explanatory. Pre-approved honors experiences are those that we have vetted and approved previously, that are led by UC experts, by faculty and staff who have expertise in whatever that area is. The learning, the time on task, the engagement is equivalent to that of a 3 credit hour course, but they're typically not credit bearing. Self-designed experiences are also, the learning and engagement is equivalent to that of a 3 credit hour course. And these are things that students design themselves. It can be designed from scratch, from the ground up, or it can be something that a student finds that is going on out there that they want to take and turn into, design into an honors experience. There's a significant proposal process for this that our students engage in with their honors advisor, and those are reviewed by our honors advising team, and then students work with them in fulfilling their self-design experience. So it's a combination of 5. And then the last piece on this slide that I'll share with you is the data on the number of different types of honors experiences that students complete. And you can see that honor seminars are critical. We would love to have more, but we typically have around 500 students enrolling in honor seminars every year. We hit our peak during COVID when a lot of the other experiential things couldn't happen at UC, but we'd like to get that number up a little bit higher. So we're very glad to see you here with us today thinking about teaching an honor seminar course. And now that I've talked about the program, about the requirements a little bit, I'll turn it over to Teresa to talk about the honor seminar proposal process and honor seminars themselves.
Great. Thank you, Debbie. So what I'd like to do is to talk a little bit about from the faculty perspective. And so just to reiterate some of the things that Debbie already said and things that I learned when I got involved in the university honors program is, again, what she said was that this is not a typical honors program where, it's a college and you have just harder classes. It's very, very different. So hopefully you've already gotten a glimpse of that right now. So in terms of, you're here, hopefully, because you're interested in coming together with a class for the honors program, which again is a really wonderful experience, I think, and I'm totally biased. But each fall, there's typically about 30 different proposals that are submitted. And as Debbie had mentioned, we go through a whole process. There's a committee who looks through those, including past faculty, as she had mentioned, students. So that becomes extremely important because what it means is as you write your proposal, you need to think about students are actually going to be reading this, thinking, do I want to take it? So of those 30 proposals that are submitted, usually about 18 to 22 are actually selected. And some of those, a number of those, about 4, usually have international study tours. So some of you might be interested in international study tours, and that might come up a little bit later when we have the panelists. So the picture here, I had asked Debbie about this. This is her group that went to Brazil, called On the River. So that happens every 2 years. It's a very popular class. So there are several different key components of a successful seminar. So if you don't include these in your proposal, then you're going to reduce your chances of it being chosen. So first of all, we need to have that connection to the UHP vision that Debbie had just talked about. And so again, just to reemphasize, what that is this connection, developing students into global citizen scholars. And again, we don't define that, the students define it themselves, but these, the idea is that they're going to lead these innovative efforts and towards solving the world's complex problems. And I need to mention that the students already are thinking this way. So they're already coming to you seeking these opportunities where they can make a difference in their world. And so again, there's the global aspect. So we want to have courses having some global aspect if they can. Of course, citizens and scholar, of course. So the other part is what I hinted at a little earlier is a successful seminar proposal, and a seminar itself has to be relevant and of interest to enough students who would enroll to take the class. So if you have the greatest idea, but no one's going to enroll in the class, it can't happen. So this is what the students are looking for specifically. Several different things. They want unique experiences. So many students are looking for something that's not just the classroom. We're encouraging people to think bigger, expand the classroom. Think about site visits. Here's some suggestions. Other courses have gone to the 1819 Innovation Hub, UC Archives. They've gone around town to different places, Rookwood Pottery, Cincinnati Zoo. So you don't have to do this, but think in terms of like expanding the constraints that you might normally be subject to in teaching just a normal class in your own department. The other thing here is acts of creation. Honor students really want to create. They want to do something. So it doesn't have to be physical, as it's mentioned here, but it can be. But these are just some suggestions. It could be a game, a work of art, and you'll see some of these when we get to our panelists, and they'll talk about some of the ideas and the things that they do to help students create. There's 2 more different things here to mention. One is a break from traditional structure. So honor students are not used to just traditional lecturing that many of us might be familiar with. I'm from biology. I used to teach huge classes of 400 students, and I'm used to lecturing. I've had to adjust, and honestly, I have greatly enjoyed it because I can do all sorts of different things. I can do active learning. I can walk around the classroom. We make use of the honors classroom where the desks are all movable. It's active learning. So that's a possibility. And then also interdisciplinary learning. This will come up also probably with our panelists. But remember that many of the students, as Debbie had mentioned, are from several different colleges in your room. So I teach a course called Dying Well on Death and Dying. We'll get to that later. But I have a whole mix of students in my class. I have 20 students. Some are biology. Well, I think maybe one. I have a lot of medical sciences. And then I have all, engineering. It's all over the place. The other thing I'm just going to pop in here too is that think also in terms of interdisciplinary learning, in terms of the possibility of you as an instructor actually bridging over into another discipline area. So for example, for my class, I'm a biologist. I actually teach with Laura Anderson from English, and we love it. It's a whole different perspective that I would never be able to do as a normal biologist teaching in my own department. So on the next slide, again, the experience-based learning is another thing that Debbie had mentioned earlier. And what I wanted to show you here is, again, some ideas, and you might have your other ones. You could ask, the panelists are going to have other ones. We talked about field projects, on-site visits. There's a lot of different classes here you can see where they're doing different things. One of the most interesting ones is they come up with pitches for funding, and they present their ideas to these organizations around town. And so again, the students are being able to create and do something that makes an impact. So that experience-based learning is really critical to include in your proposal. So another thing that Debbie already mentioned is continuous reflection. And when I first got involved, I didn't really understand the reflection piece, and you will by the end of this workshop. For honor students, again, they are trained, they are seeking areas of reflection. And so reflection is really important. What we're asking is, first of all, like what did you do? What did you experience? What are the feelings that brought up? And then the next step so that's easy, is so what? What impact did that have on you? How are you different? How do you go forward with that? And then the final step of reflection is now what? Where do you go from here? How do you take that experience that you just had and use it to go forward, into the rest of your life? And so that is really, really critical. What Debbie's clicking on right now, the students record this. They are required by the University Honors Program to keep what's known as a learning portfolio. And what Debbie is doing right now is she's showing you an example learning portfolio of these different students. And you're going to get a link later on. You can look at these on your own. These are on the Honors website. But each student has the ability to create their own website. And it talks about themselves here. You can sort of see. It talks about each of the classes that they've taken, their experiences. They reflect upon that. And so again, you'll get a link to these, but they're really fun just to see. And I really encourage you to look at some of these just to get a feeling and a flavor of what the honor students actually do. And you can see the students are really amazing. And again, these are like the top, 7% of the students at the university. So just all different ones. So the students are already doing these things. And so this is one option for you if you wanted to include reflection in your course. Well, you need to. You can have them use the learning portfolio. You don't have to. You can have your own reflective pieces. For my class in Death and Dying, for example, the students do a lot of writing. Just last week, they started writing their own obituary. And you can believe me that that's going to be a truly reflective experience. But again, you could see the students can put in videos, they can do anything that they want. So that is how important reflection is. And again, the students are seeking those out. So you really need to have reflection within your proposal deeply embedded in there, and reflective opportunities, like even in the syllabus. So that's really important. And here again, I think, Debbie, these were, also just screenshots of different learning portfolios, just sort of seeing different things. And these are reflections that students did on classes that they took with the University Honors Program. So finally, another thing here is there needs to be a connection to Next Lives Here, obviously. So this means you need to have some impacts. Again, that piece of inclusion that Debbie talked about is so, so very important. And that's, again, what the honor students are seeking. And then, of course, innovation. They want to do something new. They want to do something to make a change in their world. They're really like ready for that. And so you want to just present that as something that they could do. So with that, I'm going to hand it back to Debbie, and she will introduce our faculty panelists. Before she does that, she's getting started. I want to mention, and I put a note in the chat. I see some more things have popped up. Feel free, especially as our panelists are going along, to put any questions in the chat, and Debbie and I will be keeping track of those. And hopefully, once we have the panelists talking and we have everything happening, we'll have a lot of good discussion and interactions going on.
Thanks for your patience as I try to get the mute button to appear for myself. We have three fantastic faculty members here with us today, and I will have them introduce themselves to you and share initially in their initial introduction to please, I'll ask each of you to introduce yourself, talk about what honor seminars have you taught, and why do you teach honor seminars? And then we have lots of questions for each of you, and we'll see what questions come up from our audience too. And I can put that question in the chat. To introduce yourself, what honor seminars have you taught and why do you teach honor seminars? And Whitney, this slide showcasing Dr. Whitney Gaskins, Whitney is our first panelist, so I'll let Whitney start with that question.
Hi, everyone. My name is Whitney Gaskins. I'm Associate Dean, Associate Professor in the College of Engineering and Applied Science. I oversee the inclusive excellence and community engagement work in professional development in the College of Engineering, but I also get to engage in a lot of research about how we can educate engineers better. I am excited about the honor seminars that I have been able to teach. Why do I teach honors? It is an awesome program. Like, the students are great. It's one of the only courses that I have freedom to do something completely outside of the box and get to engage with students that aren't necessarily engineering students, although I do get engineering students who enroll, but we've had flautists and ballerinas. Like, it's just been awesome to work in an interdisciplinary way. And I love the fact, the freedom and the way to, just like the students have the competencies that we want for students, it helps me have those competencies as well as a faculty member.
Thank you, Whitney. And next up is Dr. Laura Dell. I'll ask Laura to share her overview as well.
All right. I feel like I'm like a duplicate of Whitney. Like Whitney, I'm an associate dean and associate faculty member in CECH. And I co-teach this course, Social Justice Spaces for Children, with Dr. Nancy Jennings in School of Communication, Digital Media. Sorry, I always mess up the school names that they switch from the Department of Communication to a longer school name. But yes, she's a faculty member in Arts and Sciences. And also Sarah Schroeder, who's a faculty member in the School of Education. I'm also a School of Education faculty member. What our course does is looks at essentially how social justice works in children's spaces outside of schools. Many times when we think about education, we just want to talk about schools and what happens inside schools, but we know children and adults, we learn in all sorts of spaces in our lives. One of the things I love about this course is it goes back to, sometimes folks will say, well, education, that's just, for education majors. My belief is that most people in their lives will have a small child that they're making decisions for at some point, whether you're a parent, an aunt, a grandparent, a step parent. Most of the time, there's going to be this moment where you're thinking, is that app good for my kid? What should we be doing? What kind of TV, what kind of books, where are good places to take them for entertainment? You're making those kinds of decisions. And one of the things that we really wanted to focus on was not just kind of children's spaces outside of schools, but really focusing on how social justice is covered in these spaces. So we look at both digital spaces and physical spaces for children. We can talk a lot about social justice on playgrounds. Is it in a neighborhood where all children have access to it? Is it on a bus line? Can children who may have mobility issues use the playground? Children who have visual disabilities. So, it gets very quickly, you can start seeing how social justice plays in many children's spaces. And it's also a topic children are very interested in engaging with. So we have very few education students to take this course. I think I've maybe had two, and since we've taught it. We mainly get med lab sciences students. I don't know why we get a ton of med lab science students. Maybe there's just a lot of them in the honors program. I don't know. We've had DAP students, criminal justice students, arts and sciences students, engineering students. And our culminating project, as Teresa talked about, making a thing, is our students actually get to design their own exhibits that are on display short term at the Contemporary Arts Center. So they design social justice exhibits for kids in a kid's space. I don't know if anybody's been to Contemporary Arts Center. Their kid space is amazing. And they have gallery space that's designed for community projects like ours. So they get to have a public exhibit that's open. We do an opening reception or sometimes a closing reception for the exhibits. They invite their roommates, their parents, their friends to come see the work they do. And they're all collaborative exhibits. So they have to work in small teams, which is also important to us. We've learned with the kind of type A personality honor students, sometimes they are not always happy working in a team because they want to do it exactly the way they're going to do it, because it's going to be awesome the way they do it. It's kind of what they're used to. And this is part of what we really view as this professional training for them of they're going to have to share a little space. So they have to learn to collaborate and work with each other, even when it's frustrating. So I really view that as an important part of our program. It's not just kind of this design experiences they have looking at children's media and public spaces, but also collaboration and working on collaborative skills. And we love the 1819 Center. We use all sorts of makerspace tools at the 1819 Innovation Hub. So all sorts of things, but that is our course.
Thank you, Laura. And our last introduction is Dr. Ashley Pazzi-Puente. And then Ashley will do her introduction, and then I will step in to facilitate the next question. Ashley.
Hi, everyone. I don't know if you can advance the slide. Still on Laura, but my name is Ashley Pazzi-Puente. There I am. So my course is From Soda Cans to Smartphones, How It's Made. So I very intentionally play off the How It's Made show kind of from, when we were kids, but this is geared towards material science. So kind of an intro to material science course, but the spin I like to do with it is that there's a bit of a traditional lecture component in the sense that students learn about material science concepts early on in the class, but then it's their job for the second half of the semester essentially to come up with demos and activities to then take and host a one-day materials camp for local outreach. So for high school and some middle school students as well. And so they have to go and take what they learned from the initial part of the class, and I try and keep that as hands-on and engaging and interactive as possible, so they get some ideas and then translate that to their own workshop to run this camp. So you can see in the pictures there from one of the camps we did, we had a bunch of high school students come in and do all of these hands-on demos. So that's basic summary of the course. I probably should have introduced myself. I am not an associate dean like Whitney and Laura, but I am an associate professor, and I'm also the material science program chair and graduate director right now. And so, yeah, that's probably about all I have unless there's specific questions.
Thank you, Ashley. Yeah, and most of the faculty who teach for us are not associate deans.
Yeah,
so
I would imagine so. The associate deans tend to be a little bit busy. These guys are just overachievers.
Yes, which, is reflective of our student population too. And yeah, and so these are I'll give you a window into tomorrow's for anyone coming tomorrow. I have all the faculty slides here. So tomorrow, if anyone's interested, our faculty panelists are Zach Fuchs from engineering, Flavia Bastos from DAP, and Chris Holland from DAP as well. And so if you're interested in hearing from them when I record tomorrow's video, you are welcome to fast forward through that later and watch it. But yeah, thank you so much to each of our panelists for those introductions. There was a great question in the chat about can students who are enrolled in a fully online BA program be in the University Honors Program? At this time, unfortunately, that answer is no. We've had discussions with UC Online and within our team, and strategically tried to figure out how we could offer those students a quality experience, and we don't have the resources to do that at this time. So we haven't opened it up to fully online students. However, if you connected with that is that honor seminars could be offered fully online. We've had, certainly during COVID, they all went fully online for a while, and we've had some faculty continue to integrate hybrid, teach hybrid honor seminars. And then once in a while, we do have a faculty member who's interested in proposing a fully online honor seminar. So you can propose that. So that's the answer to that question. I know Whitney Gaskins didn't have a chance to talk about her classes, so I'll ask Whitney to share a little bit about the honor seminars that she has taught, and then we'll jump into another broad question.
Yeah, I apologize. I was like, oh, I should have told you what I teach. So I teach a course called Sticky Innovation and then another one called Biodesign. The courses are designed to teach design thinking, but couched in a way that actually are about the environment. So Sticky Innovation is about colony collapse disorder and the fact that we are losing honeybees who populate most of our food. And so we go through this teaching kids, I need to stop doing that. I've been with my kindergartners so long. Teaching the students about first the issue, but then also what can you do to solve it? And it's a wicked problem, meaning it has a lot of unintended consequences. And really working through what can you do to solve the problem. We integrated reflection into the course. And so you saw the honors portfolio. That's one of our homework assignments. So after every assignment that the students complete, they have to do a reflection, whether it's written, a video, we've had people write music, but it has to upload to their portfolio and we grade off of their website. We do that so that way it's not extra work. So it's integrated completely into the course. So they build out their portfolio while they're also learning. They get an opportunity to visit, if it's Sticky Innovation, they visit Green Hills Farms. I can't remember. Is that what it's called? Green Acres. Thank you. I'm like, what?
Green
Green
Acres.
Acres. We take them there. They actually have honeybees. And so they keep them, and so they get to learn what that's like to be a beekeeper. Um, they also have a capstone project where they develop the solution to the problem. It has to have something that has an artifact. And we partner with the 1819 Innovation Hub. So students get to learn via making and they get certifications at the makerspace that obviously will serve them past our course. So they can take a sewing, laser cutting, woodworking. We've had a few students do a wide variety of like activities because it all helps them make their artifact for the end capstone project. Biodesign is very similar, teaching the thinking, but the beautiful thing about the biodesign is it's not just about colony collapse disorder. So we expand it that it could be about something that they're very passionate about, building sustainable solutions to some of the world's most wicked problems. They develop the entire class. They develop projects and proposals, and they can compete in the International Biodesign Competition that is hosted at the MoMA in New York. So it's a wonderful opportunity for them to go through this engineering. I should say design thinking. I teach the engineering design. Nandita is my co-teacher in DAP that actually teaches design thinking. We marry those so that they can work through how to solve problems in different ways and have the different skill sets to do so. And they develop their solutions. And again, it has to be an artifact with that reflective piece built into the course. It's a ton of fun. Some of my favorite courses to teach.
Thank you, Whitney. And I'll ask each of our panelists to share, and feel free to share anything that you miss sharing about your courses too throughout. One of the most common questions that we receive from faculty developing on our seminar courses is how to make the course accessible to UHP students across disciplines and years while still being intellectually rigorous. So how do you all do that? Feel free to jump in any order you choose.
So we have a wide variety of teaching media that we use for the course, so that way we know we have students with a varying degrees of experiences, co-ops, all of those things, because we have all interdisciplinary. So we incorporated reading fiction, nonfiction, movies, TED Talks, and it's required. A lot of times the students hate reading, which actually shocks me more than anything else, but um, we make them read. And that helps them level up. And we have lots of course and class discussion time to make sure that people are digesting information and up to speed. The videos really do help, especially when we talk about colony collapse disorder. That could be a class in itself. But having an expert talk about it in a TED Talk really does help people get up to speed quickly. And some of the assignments are research. So dive deeper. What did you hear that you didn't know more about? And one of the assignments might be working as a group, figuring out what more information you need to know about this phenomena, and then they share out, so then they learn from each other. So one group might explore the impact of pesticides, where another group might look at farming practices, and so then we have experts in certain things around the room when we talk about that colony collapse disorder, and they can ping each other and learn from one another in that way too.
Can jump in and kind of echo what Whitney said, and apologies, my son just wandered in, so he and grandma came back from the park and McDonald's, so but anyhow, so for my course, it is a little bit difficult because it's mostly engineers in my course. We do have the occasional, architecture or journalism or, whatever else it might be, major, but I find, kind of echoing what Whitney said, that kind of peer instruction, a lot of what is in my class is group work based. And so I think people have the opportunity to dive in as much or as little as they want into certain aspects. And I think the other piece of it is, honestly, I feel bad saying this as a material scientist myself, but the content of the course to me is less about the actual technical details of the material science and more about them engaging with each other, engaging with the community, and doing the outreach, and just having more of an awareness about materials and awareness of the types of things they interact with and a materials like perspective every day, because that's one of the things I teach in the class is you can't make it without materials, right? Literally everything around us is made out of something. And so what I really want them to get is not the details of material science, but that perspective and like awareness of the world around them from a sustainability standpoint, from just you know, interacting with the world, and then also from the outreach standpoint. So I think all of those we're able to hit on through the group work and through the outreach event that we do.
Laura, do you have anything you would add about engaging students across disciplines and years?
Yeah, I think for us in our course, one, we have people from 3 different disciplines that teach together. So rarely is a student really going to be adroit in all those spaces. Now, so we talk about everything from, they're designing exhibits. So we have to talk about basic design theory. I do a lecture on writing a good exhibit label. And I don't know if anybody at this university teaches that. Maybe Chris Holland does. He might be about the only one who ever talks about an exhibit label, but me at this university, we talk about, typography, we talk about design issues, what's good graphic design, physical design, but then we also are talking about things like what's happening in child's development, what kinds of access and inclusion spaces. We talk a lot about children's identity development because that tends to be kind of the number one, tends to be the social justice space children enter first, because, we start out as very introspective people and very physically, centered, self-centered people. And I don't mean that in a bad way, but that is how we develop as small children. And then once we learn about ourselves, we peel out. So we talk a lot about children's identity development. So we do lectures on kind of basic child development and especially around identity development. So we end up touching on a lot of different spaces. We talk about digital media, what's happening in television, apps, you know, what's happening in those kids spaces. So, you know, that's kind of our Nancy's communication space, is that's where her specialty is in kids digital media. So we really are touching so many places in our course. Like, even if, you know, I have DAP majors, and, you know, and on the days when we're doing like basic design principles, I'm like, this is going to be a review for you, obviously. But I also then engage those folks. I'm like, what are we missing? DAP senior who's working on their senior design project. What are some of the other things you think are great tips on kind of basic design for non-designers, essentially what we're trying to do. So, you know, so nobody has all the knowledge. And even when people do, that's a great way to pull in this honor student, to have them be part of the expert in that space. And then when they go into other spaces, they're like, but I don't know anything about kids. I may know design, but I don't know anything about kids and design. And, you know, we talk about don't make everything primary colored and all those kinds of things. So I guess that's kind of my thought, is because our course tends to be so interdisciplinary, and I think many of the honors courses are, they also tend to not be those topics that's like on any of your standards list. It's like the things you wish you could teach outside your curriculum. So even your majors are not coming in with this knowledge. You know, my education majors, they're designing lessons plans, but they're rarely designing any physical interactive things that kids are engaging with, or they're not designing websites for kids or podcasts for kids. You know, they're not, that's just, so I think that is part of what makes it different also, is that part of kind of how we construct these courses. And I mean, you heard that across all three of the courses, kind of that these are all things, while they tie to your discipline, they're not in learning outcomes in any of these other courses in your discipline. Things you wish you could teach. That's what honors courses are great for. The things you wish your students knew, but they don't fall neatly in your, you know, program learning outcomes.
Laura, that's a great point. We're really good as a program of not fitting in the box. And so we spend a lot of our time, I spend a lot of my time in my work breaking down the boxes and the barriers that keep faculty from being able to do these kinds of things. And honor seminars are a great place to pilot, experiment, innovate very thoughtfully with students. The next question I popped into the chat so our panelists and everyone could see it. This is a common question we are asked as well. How do you assess learning in your honor seminar? What types of assignments and projects do you assign? I always love hearing faculty describe this.
I can jump in, I guess, if nobody wants to go first. I think we're all afraid to step on each other's toes. So I have a variety of assignments. Like has been mentioned already, the reflection piece is critical to the honors seminars. And so I have, I think 10 throughout the semester discussion posts on Canvas for the students to talk about. Again, kind of in line with this thing that I mentioned about just an awareness of materials, about recycling, about outreach, and reflecting on a time where they felt like they were engaged through some kind of outreach opportunity, bunch of different things like that. Then again, it's less about the materials topics themselves, although I do have them do some activities and turn in some plots that they make for stress strain curves and things like that. Again, kind of group-based projects, but they do that in class primarily. But it's more about the workshop design itself. And so I have them submit assignments that are lesson plans, where they actually dictate to me the timing and what they plan on talking about in their kind of lecture portion of their workshop. And then also submit their main assignment is to submit the plan for their demo for the workshop. And then also a video of them doing the workshop and the demo. And so most of the assignments are more geared towards that aspect of it, of what their outreach project is going to be. And so they have to flesh that out enough so that I would be able to reproduce it if I were to go take it next year and be able to deliver that workshop for another group of students.
We use a wide variety of projects and assessment measures. So the reflections, again, are critical, and we're very clear about the reflections don't need to be written. You can reflect by doing a painting or a video or a dance or a song, right? But we need to be able to see that you've learned and you can express yourself however fits you. And that's been really helpful. We've also, I'll just say this, it's interesting to me. We train students to think a certain way, and then when they don't get a hard rubric about what is included, it is uncomfortable. And we are intentionally making them uncomfortable because I think we've done a disservice in our educational environment, letting them know that there are these check marks that you have to hit because there are sometimes you're gonna have a job that there aren't those check marks. You got to figure it out. And so that's part of the class intentionally. We make them reflect on that process. 9 times out of 10, they hate it. Why can't you give us this rubric? We're not going to give you a rubric. There is no rubric in life, right? Like you just need to figure it out. And so by the end, a few of them get it, but it does make they're honor students. So they're very used to achieving and understanding what achieving looks like. It is uncomfortable. That is an intentionally built-in element of our course, to get students to understand what creativity and innovation actually feels like, because there's not going to always be like there was no rubric for Facebook. There was no rubric for any of social media. They just did it, right? So you have to get used to that element of life. And we do make them reflect on the things that we know are hard. Our discussions are graded. And even though we don't, again, have the rubric, but participating, giving intellectual thought, and we do a lot of course discussion because they have to teach and learn from each other. They're graded from a standpoint of like, okay, we can tell that you've read this or not. We can see that you've done the research or not. And that really helps us understand how students are coming along in class. And we have really fun course projects. So they have, before they even make their capstone projects, sometimes they are making smaller projects. So for sticky innovation, they have to make and design their ideal bee. So all of these things that we've done to the world are impacting honeybees. But what would you do if you could make an ideal honeybee? What would that look like? It helps us understand where their mind is. It helps them learn through making because they actually have to make this bee, and build a rapid prototype and then actually make a refined one. So we do a lot through making to assess how students are learning in that class participation.
I totally agree with what Whitney and Ashley are saying. I definitely come from more of kind of this ungraded perspective. They're not grades in life, and yes, that is tough. It's really tough for this group. And we talk about that from the beginning. Like, this is gonna be uncomfortable for you. And we're pushing them into spaces they're not used to. So when they start the class, they're like, I have to design something. There's an exhibit that's gonna be in a public space, and they're worried they're gonna get like a bad grade on it. So like at the beginning, we kind of like try and put those spaces to the side and kind of that thinking to the side of, I am not looking to destroy anybody's GPA in this class. These are kind of conversations I have with it. I'm like, if you just do what you need to do in this class, pretty much everybody's going to get an A. This is terrible. See, I just said that in front of Debbie, but it's true. But they also do want it. These are honor students. They don't do anything halfway. So I don't tend to worry about it, especially because there are these very public ways. Some of the things they're going to do are going to be demonstrated. So they're very focused on doing this work and doing it well. I'm usually just trying to get them to be less stressed out about it because I want them to be good in their classes and their majors. Those are the things that I really want them to feel like they can focus on. And I don't want my class to be a distraction to that other space. Now I want them to be participating. And if they are not, I will have conversations with you. If you are not engaging well with your team, I will have a conversation with you. But I'm always trying to get them kind of disconnected and letting go of this grading space and that stress that they bring into this, when we do this class. Yeah.
Ashley, if there's anything you want to add, please feel free. Otherwise, the next question that I'll ask the group, how do you create an inclusive learning environment in your honor seminars? But Ashley, I hope I don't want to do you have anything to add about grading and assessing?
No, I think the other ladies were spot on that, like, I tell them the same kind of thing, right? It's not about grades, it's about learning and being involved, and I like what Whitney said about the rubric, like there is no rubric, right? And there's so it I think it's interesting that all of us have this approach of not super structured uh, uh content for the course, because that I think, like Whitney said earlier, it gives this flexibility to the course that a lot of other courses don't have, right? So I agree with all of that.
Thank you. So if for any of you who would like to jump in, how do you create an inclusive learning environment in your honors classes? And some of you have hit on some of these pieces already, but yeah, please share your thoughts.
We set an expectation really early, more of what's expected, explaining how the world actually is, why we want interdisciplinary teams, but then also how we have to honor difference in people, and how having different people in the team is going to probably make your product, because they have to develop an artifact or product at the end, even better. And so we kind of start with that, right? Like it's kind of a flow of the class, and it's an expectation. I can't say like groups have issues sometimes, and that's why we bring in a speaker to talk about a group compact and how do you work together and how do you do conflict resolution. But there's an expectation of inclusion in working together, like that interdisciplinary working together.
We talk about it similarly. I don't maybe do it as early on, but in the context of preparing for the materials camp, I actually have somebody from Whitney's office come in and talk about engagement and inclusion with outreach events, because they're they're well prepared to do that and have that conversation, and basically just make it apparent to the students and make them have this reflection and kind of conversation amongst themselves and internally of, if we're going to do an outreach event, we want this to be an inclusive event. And why is it important for it to be inclusive? Why in other instances where you were in an outreach event, perhaps you didn't feel included, or you know, how did that affect you in that situation, right? So we have those discussions in the context of the outreach event, but I think that permeates to within the classroom as well, that is an important aspect of just interacting with these teams and in life.
Ours is a social justice class, so we talk about it on the first day. And we really talk about that should be pretty upfront, especially students that come from privileged identities. There is going to be a lecture that's going to be uncomfortable. I don't know which one it's going to be at the beginning, but if you come from especially multiple privileged identities, there's going to be a day where you are struggling. And I want them to know that up front, especially if we're talking about kids spaces. I think a lot of times people are not comfortable talking about social justice with young children. Yeah, I mean, 'cause people talk about like, really, do we need to talk about transgender people with 4-year-olds? Yeah, you do, because they're people in our community, and they're really easy conversations to have. And yeah, and we'll see people in our communities who wear headscarves, so we need to talk about why those people make those choices and why they're making modesty choices and what it means. These are people in our community, but it's space that people are uncomfortable with. Like, really, do we need to talk about race with kids? Yes. Do we need to talk about religion with kids? Yes. Do we need to talk about gender and all the things? Yes. But it is space that people don't want to go to, especially with young children. And people, sometimes it gets uncomfortable, especially if sometimes we have older students that have children. They're like, well, in our family, we don't, we wouldn't believe in maybe transgender. I'll use that as the example. So I really don't know if I want to see that talked about on Arthur on PBS. But when we then talk about is, those are all people in our community. Doesn't mean what you talk about in your family is your family values or another thing, but it means we can't pretend people don't exist in our communities, and we shouldn't treat children that way. Children see all these people every day. So we really talk about it from day one. And sometimes it is very challenging for folks. We're also dealing with physical materials, so we're talking a lot about physical access too, since we're trying to create things for spaces for kids. We're even talking about things like kind of ageism of like how tall things are on the wall. Like, where's your 4-year-old's line of sight versus an adult's line of sight, or where can they reach on a wall to turn a knob or things like that. So there's kind of some ageist spaces that come into design also of who can reach things. And also sometimes, you know, they get really worried about like where the sign is. I'm like, so like the 3-year-old's not reading, just so you know. Like sometimes the sign is just for the adult that's with the 3-year-old, but we can talk about that. Like, how is this intergenerational group of people engaging with this space that they're designing? So I know there's my another long-winded answer, sorry, about inclusion, how we talk about in our class.
Thank you, Laura. Thank you, all three of you. I don't see any questions from participants yet, so I'll ask faculty a big picture question. How do you benefit from teaching honor seminars? Why do you do this? How do you benefit from it? Why do you stick around and keep coming back? Because everyone on here has talked with us multiple times. So what are the benefits for you?
I'm a better educator teaching honors courses. I stay up to speed on like what students are thinking, what they're going through, how they're experiencing the world, and it helps me inform how I teach in my other courses as well. I also believe everyone needs a creative outlet, and honors courses provide an outlet for me to be just as creative as the students. And so I enjoy that too. So as much as it's for the students, it gives me so much as well. Like I am experiencing the same things that the honors students in the class are experiencing. And so it's a wonderful collaborative and reciprocal relationship in the honors program. And I get to see students that I don't normally see. Like we're so siloed. I'm in engineering and I love engineers, but there's so much more to the world. Like I would love to be around other people, and I get to do that because I get to teach in honors.
I would go a step beyond that. I not only get to see non-engineers, but I currently am in a grad only program, so I get to teach undergrads. And when I teach the honors course, and that's pretty rare for me, or when I'm teaching undergrads, the occasional dualistic class, and they're all seniors, and there's a handful of them in my upper grad courses. But I think also similar to what Whitney said, I think it's an opportunity for me to connect with the students. And I think there's a lot of light bulbs that I see go off, particularly people who aren't engineers and aren't used to experiencing, thinking about materials or thinking about engineering or design concepts in that way. And so it's both engaging and fun for me because it gives me just a different perspective than the typical student I deal with in every other one of my classes.
One of the things I find, just because of the nature of the course you're doing, they're slightly smaller than maybe some of your courses. They're not a lot smaller than my other courses, but they're slightly smaller. But I feel like I really develop much more intense relationships with these students because we're doing all this individualized work. We're really digging into things. We're having really personal, big conversations in my course. And these are students that I still have lunch with. I have a student I taught 2 years ago that I still have lunch with once a month. And these are students that come into my office. They all know where my office is, mainly because we store everything in my office during the course. So they all people pop in all the time. And it's a different level of connection that I think happens in these courses, which I love. And I also love adolescents. So like I love talking to 18 and 19-year-olds. I love teenagers, and sorry, all undergrads or adolescents. That's a whole nother child development conversation. But um, yeah, they're fun people, and it's a really fun way to connect with them.
Thank you. Great answers. I love hearing why you stick around and why you teach. Great question in the chat. What's the enrollment typically? The max cap is 20 to 25, and enrollment is typically 12 to 20. And we leave that to you to decide as the instructor how it fits your pedagogy and what you want to do, what experiential activities you're going to have. Do you need to limit it to 16 for some reason related to that, or can you take up to 25? So yeah, that's what it is. And then if a class, let's say, has 10 students, we don't cancel it. We leave that up to you and your department for what to do with it. So if you have a lower enrollment for whatever reason, then the class can run as long as your department still supports that, and we still provide that full funding to it. Any questions? I don't see any questions from our any other questions from our participants yet. So I'll ask Teresa, did I miss any significant questions? And our panelists, is there anything that you would want to talk about or share that when you were just getting started in doing this and proposing, that we haven't talked about that you think would be helpful for our participants to know? Ashley?
I may have missed it earlier if you talked about, but one of the things that I would tell people early on in the process is prepare your proposal and try and get feedback both from Debbie and Teresa or whoever else. I'm also on the selection committee, and I think they want this to be successful, right? So they are great at helping, whether it's workshopping titles for the course or descriptions so that students are engaged and want to enroll. Whatever aspects of your proposal you might need help with, they're willing to help and give really great feedback, and maybe even get some students involved on giving feedback. So don't be hesitant to ask for input and advice on how to structure, how to put together the proposal, because I think, like I said, everybody wants it to be successful. And if it's not the first time, take the feedback and workshop it and do it again the next year or 2 years, whatever. But definitely listen to the feedback, especially from the students. Actually, no offense, Debbie and Teresa, but the students are more in touch with what current students are looking for and are interested in, right? And they're the ones who oftentimes give the best feedback in the selection committee. So, just get the help, or put it together early enough that you can get feedback before the deadline. But even if it's after the deadline, they'll sometimes work with you to kind of edit things.
I agree with Ashley. You need a good hook. You need a good title. Like, you have to have a good hook. This is sales, because these are honor students and they have lots of choices. They don't have to pick your course. They have tons of choices. And occasionally they might pick it because of the time of day it's offered, but a lot of times they do have lots of choices that you really have to compete with them. They have to be excited about it. So it can't just be a topic that you, as a specialist in your field, think is really cool. It has to be something that a broad swath of students from multiple majors could see themselves engaging in. So it's how do you piece together that this makes sense? Like, we've had to really explain that our course is not an education course. It's actually really not for education majors. It's for all those people who may they have a small child in their life, which is most people will have some type of small child they're making decisions about. So how do you really kind of tell that story? How do you have a snazzy title? Titles are really important. As educators, we love a good colon in any title. But I think something, if you have to resist that urge of having a bunch of really academic-y kinds of things in the course name. And like, I did one on science and children's media. We did it during the pandemic. And it was called The Science of Sesame Street. It's totally not super academic. There was no colon at all. That was the end of the story, The Science of Sesame Street. But it caught people because they're like, I love Sesame Street. What are we going to talk about with Sesame Street? So the title, listen to student feedback. And we did, I've gotten student feedback on both the courses we've done. And sometimes they are harsh. They're like, I don't know why I would take this class. I'm like, all right, I hear that. I hate to tell this story in a different way.
I just have to add to that. I have considered, so materials, we refer to it all the time as the science of stuff. And so that was also one of the titles I considered, but I thought it might be a little too vague. So, yeah, I went with the how it's made, but I have thought about changing the title, Science of Stuff.
Yeah, and this made me, I really appreciate this comments. This made me think about something that I tell faculty often too in this process, and that I see with the review committee, that quite often the answer in your proposal to the second, I think it's the second question. So there's a question that says, what's your title? It has to be attractive, marketed to students. And everything that has been said here is so important to pay attention to about enrollment. And then there's a box for your course description. And then there's a question saying, how does this course connect to the UHP vision? And honestly, most of the answers about how the course connects to the UHP vision is a better description of the course and is going to be more attractive to students than the academically based description that's written. Now, this is one of the ways where we're out of the box and we challenge some parameters, because you've got to put something in e-curriculum. And then what you put in e-curriculum for the description is what shows up in Catalyst when students are registering. But if there are ways to integrate those things and get the really motivating visionary stuff that people put in that answer to the question about the UHP vision and how it relates, to get that into your course description, it's okay if the answers to those questions overlap. It's okay if some of the stuff from your answer to your vision question overlaps in the course description. Because that's what in the review committee, the students are like, wow, I love this, but the course description, I don't know what I would do in that class, but the other answer captures it so well. So that's some food for thought. We just have a couple minutes left. Whitney, I'm not sure if I gave you a chance to jump in on that last question. Anything from Whitney, and any last thoughts from our panelists, or Teresa as a veteran honor seminar instructor too? Teresa, please feel free to add your thoughts too.
Well, I'm watching Whitney. We're like battling. Whitney, do you want to go? Okay, I'll be quick. I was thinking two things. One is that just logistics. So as you do your proposal, one of the requirements is you do need to get a letter from your departmental head or whoever is your supervisor in support. And so it could be very basic, like, I support this proposal. You know, it could be, in the past, I've had like an email message, and that was enough. So that's really important, because you need to have that support. The other piece that is helpful when you're going to your department to try to say, hey, I want to do this. And some departments are like, you know, but there's all this other stuff we have to have you do. One of the things is that the honors program does give financial compensation to the department. And I'm looking at Debbie to make sure I have these numbers right. It's $6,000 for a single instructor, and for more than one, then it would be $8,000 split equally among the instructors. And so again, that goes to the department. Ideally, we would hope it would go to you, but ultimately it's up to the department to decide where that goes. I know in my department, it actually comes to me. I know in other departments, it actually goes to a more general fund that might go to hire an adjunct to teach another course. But that's something that you can tell your department as an added little carrot, you know, to let you teach an honors course if there's any resistance.
Whitney, your final thoughts.
I didn't have anything to add. I just wanted to say you should do it at least once. Just go out and try and teach an honors course, and then you'll understand why we love it so much. But do it.
So welcome. Thank you so much, Teresa. And I have slides on here actually from all the faculty panelists across the multiple workshops that we've done. So Whitney Gaskins, Laura Dell, and Ashley Pazzi-Puente were our guest panelists yesterday. And today we have two faculty panelists, and I will have Zach and Flavia introduce themselves to you as well. And Teresa will also be able to chime in and answer questions as someone who has taught honor seminars before as well. Zach and Flavia, I'll ask you to do an initial introduction to talk about, introduce yourself. What honor seminar or seminars do you teach or have you taught, and why do you teach honor seminars? So that will be your first question and your introduction, and I'll pop that into the chat too. So Zach, your slide came up first, so I'll put you on the spot first.
Okay, thanks. My name is Zach Fuchs. I'm an associate professor in the electrical and computer engineering department, where I teach mostly kind of control theory courses, embedded systems courses, like electronics and things like that. So I guess I'll start with the class I teach. I teach a pinball design course, which is kind of came out of almost like a spin-off of a course that I teach within our department called Introduction to Mechatronics. And I previously taught the course actually up at Wright State when I was up there. But when I came to UC, we moved, we got a new house, and we had a basement, and I got a pinball machine for the basement. And then it was really fun, and I enjoyed it, and my family enjoyed it. And then I ended up with like 10 pinball machines in my basement. And during that process, I started to restore some older machines. And I realized that the engineering inside of a pinball machine is very similar to the engineering that I teach in my engineering course. So I made a custom pinball machine for that course in which students learned how to program and design electronics. That's an upper level electrical and computer engineering elective course, and it's a hardcore engineering course. But designing the machine was a lot of fun too. And I thought it'd be really cool if I could have a course where students get to pick a theme and make a machine, but that would not really fit within the curriculum of our standard department course. And that's when I learned about the honors program, and I was like, hey, this is like a great opportunity to create this really novel, unique class that probably couldn't exist anywhere else in the university. So in my class, students get to pick a theme or a story that they want to tell, and we capture that theme or tell that story in the context of a pinball machine. So we literally start from scratch. Like, a lot of these students have never even played pinball before. So we come into my lab where I have a bunch of pinball machines, like commercial pinball machines. We play pinball. I talk about what makes a pinball machine click, right? So it's not just the engineering, but it's also like the art and the rules and the music and how all of that mashes together to build up a theme and tell a story. I basically, it's like Imagineering in a box, right? And the students pick a theme, and we build these pinball machines over the entire semester. Every couple of weeks, they have a capability milestone that they have to demonstrate that kind of guide them towards having a complete machine. They work in teams. The way the demographics of the class work out, it's like a third of the students are from my department, so electrical, computer science, computer engineering. A third of the students typically are like other engineering-ish, and then like a third are from outside of our college. So they get to pick their own teams, but I kind of require that they have like one person from each of those bins on their teams. So they end up with these multidisciplinary teams, and then that works really well because like everyone finds their own little niche within the team to work on within the machine, and it kind of really captures that multidisciplinary kind of aspect of pinball. And as part of the class, we have guest lectures from real world pinball designers. So for example, one year we had the entire design team for the Godzilla pinball machine from Stern Pinball do a virtual guest lecture. So that was their lead game designer, their graphics designer, their lead computer science person, their lead electrical engineer, their lead mechanical engineer, executive producer, and sound person. All talked about what they did on that particular machine. And then also that year, we got a coach bus and we took them up to Chicago and we toured the Stern Pinball factory while they were making Godzilla, and were led around by members of that design team to show how that machine comes together and turns into a real thing. And then that same weekend was the Pinball Expo, which is like a big industry conference. And the students got to go to Expo and see the machine announced and play the machine with the designers and the whole pinball community. So it was a really unique experience. And yeah, so I mean, that's that. And why do I like, I mean, I love this class. It's, you know, I enjoy pinball, but I also enjoy creating things. Like engineering is it really is a creative thing. And I enjoy working with really smart, motivated students. Like, these students are some of the most motivated independent working students I've ever had. And like sometimes it's a challenge for me to keep feeding them and like keep moving along because they're so like excited and ready to go. It's a blast. I don't know. So yeah, I mean it's been cool. I could talk forever. I won't talk too long, but that's kind of my class in a nutshell.
Thank you, Zach. That's awesome. Flavia, if you could, talk about your honor seminars and then why you teach them. And then Teresa can jump in after Flavia and share as well. Oh, and I'll switch to your slide, Flavia.
Thank you. Well, I'll be happy to talk about my honor seminar, and I think it's a great segue because I think what connects my seminar with Zach's is perhaps a broad definition of creativity. So I am a faculty member in DAP, in the School of Art. I am Brazilian originally. I have been at UC for 20 plus years. I have stopped counting after 20. And the reason I enjoy teaching honor seminars, it's because as a creative person, honors is an avenue where I can explore some of my personal and professional passions and remain creative and revitalized as a teacher. I think, having been at an institution for 20 years, you end up teaching some of the courses that need to be taught or even classes that you developed at some point. And of course, we adapt things every semester. But with honors, because it's a peer-reviewed process, right? You have colleagues and you have students really vetting your ideas to say, yes, I would invest my time in learning about this. You really have courses that remain fresh. And I think for me, it's an opportunity to explore some of my passions and to test some of the concepts I have for teaching. So I have been teaching 2 honor seminars that have been very successful. One that's not on this slide, but Debbie referred to before. It's called Dance in the City. And before becoming a visual arts educator, I was trained as a dancer. I was trained as a classical dancer. Then I became a modern dancer. And that part of my life, I left once I went to graduate school. So it was a way to get back in touch with that passion that I no longer exercised. And that seminar was about exposing students to a variety of dance forms and practices that exist in our Cincinnati community and help them develop tools to understand dance and to interpret and talk about it. The most recent honor seminar I've been working with is this Doing Good Together, the student philanthropy studio. And that really comes partly from my own reflections on philanthropy, because as a Brazilian, in Brazil, the structure of philanthropy is very different from the structure in the United States. So this idea of private philanthropy is not as big as it is here. So that was something that as I became more engaged in community and been asked to serve on boards and to contribute, I learned more about what philanthropy means here. And then as I accumulate years at the University of Cincinnati, and I'm grateful too for the career I was able to develop here, I became interested in how to cultivate a philanthropic mindset with students. And that's what this course is about. This course is a partnership with the UC Foundation, which gives us a pool of money. And then the experiential part of the course is the students interact with various UC organizations and learn about their philanthropic mission, the needs that they address, and the needs that they may have in the future. And then they summarize what they've learned in a public presentation. And there are guests who attend, and the guests rank the different presentations according to relevance. And then the funds that the UC Foundation made available are distributed accordingly, according to the rank. So last spring, we piloted this course And it was a tremendous success. We had $20,000 promised to us. That award was doubled on the spot because there were some foundation reps who were very impressed by what our honorary students were able to say and how they connected their personal experiences to these various causes they were talking about. So we distributed $40,000 to 5 organizations: the Bearcat Pantry, Gen 1 Housing, Level Up, Community Dental Day, and the Osher Center for Integrative Medicine. And I think what this course is really highlighting is the opportunity that we have to connect philanthropy to developing our students' community engagement and civic engagement mindset, so that they graduate already understanding the ecosystem of philanthropy on campus, which supports their experience as students. And a lot of the students didn't even know that UC was a nonprofit organization. I don't know if I answered all the questions that Debbie had posed for me, but I think I will stop there. And if I didn't, please ask me.
Yeah, you did, Flavia. You answered them very well. And Teresa, if you want to chime in about why do you teach, you've talked about your class a little bit, why do you teach honors seminars? And then I'll ask the next question, and I'll pop the next question in the chat too, so our panelists can see that and think about it.
Great, thanks, Debbie. So I had mentioned earlier, I teach a class on death and dying. It's called Dying Well. This is the 3rd time we've taught it, and it's very successful. The reason that I chose this class actually is it came about in conversations with honor students. And we were having lunch one day and we're just sitting around a table, and somehow we got on the topic of death. This is our honor students, so you're going to go places. The question came, can you die well? Can you die poorly? And the thing that we suddenly realize is no one talks about death, right? But it's something that we're all going to experience 100% without a doubt. And so we wanted to do better by that. And so we talk a lot about death in our class. We have 20 students, so it's very small. And we talk a lot about the biological aspect. That's relatively easy. But then we go into all different aspects: the philosophy, the spiritual, religious nature, cultural differences. That's extremely important. Law, we talk about hospice care. We talk about all different types of death. And so my hope and my aim is for the students to become more comfortable thinking about death, because the Western perception of death is much different than in other parts of the world where death is just widely, it's a part of life. And so we're trying to get each student to be able to reflect upon that and to have their experiences inform their view of death going forward. And really what the class is really about is for students to think about at the end of their lives, how have they lived it? And so really the class is about how to live your life well. And so students seem to get a lot out of it. And I'm very passionate about this. And I'm following Flavia because you can detect her passion, and Zach as well. And so you can see each of us, for us, this is something we're passionate about that we normally wouldn't be able to teach in a normal everyday sense in our own departments and colleges. And so that's why I do it. The students actually drive my interest and my passion.
Thank you, Teresa. And there's a question in the chat. How do we start the conversation on potential topics? We're happy to meet with anyone and brainstorm and talk. We can pop time on our calendar anytime, and we're happy to work with folks and chat about ideas. And we can even, if there's time at the end here today too, we can brainstorm with whoever's here at the end as well. This is a great time to do that.
Just because, right after this, I asked the question. My name is Asawali Deshmukh, and I'm a associate professor in the Department of Economics at Lindner College of Business. I have another meeting right after this, but the reason I said this, and I so resonated with Flavia's discussion, because at University of Dayton in November, I am going to be one who is going to perform an Indian classical dance in one of their seminar programs to showcase Indian music. My husband plays the Indian drums. So we have a 25-minute presentation followed by question and answers as a part of their seminar thing. Like, you know what I mean? So I knew this was such a cool thing. And I was like, oh my God, we don't do something like that. But I was not even aware. And look what I hear right now. I'm like, oh my God.
Do you want
That's
to come to my
wonderful.
class?
I dance Indian classical dance called Kathak. And so it is very close to flamenco, the tapping of the flamenco. So they are doing a contrast. We have a flamenco dancer there, and we will kind of jam in sorts.
Oh,
So sure, it's open to everybody, by the way. I can invite anybody, but I would most certainly like to kind of, send an email and set up a time to talk
Yeah.
about potential. I'm a pretty list person, so I've already made a list of questions. So, but
That's awesome.
thank you.
Yeah, and I think I know that one of the benefits that faculty talk with me about are the connections that they make with each other too across these in our honors faculty community. And we need to do some social events to get you all together again. We haven't done a lot of that since COVID. So we'll keep going, and if you have other questions, please pop them in there. I put a question in the chat for our panelists to talk about. One of the most common questions that were asked is, how do you make your course accessible to all university honors students across disciplines and across years? You could have first years through seniors while the class is still being intellectually rigorous. How do you make that work in your classes?
Well, I can maybe try to take a stab at that answer. I think part of the way to do that is to make sure it's not a content focused course. This is not about we are going to master this specific content. It's a discovery course so that the perspectives that the students bring can be complementary. So my partner in the philanthropy course is very good about saying, we use a constructivist framework for teaching, which is true. I just typically don't talk about my teaching in that way. But it is about, it's not done, right? You don't design a course knowing exactly what the students are going to learn. And you learn along with them, which is always both the challenge and the excitement, because usually we're all looking at, things that are happening in the media. I think things that are happening around us, we are bringing new content to the course as it develops because it's not set. So that's in one of ways that everybody can bring the gifts and the skills that they have and build upon each other.
I'll go next. My class could be very challenging from a technical standpoint, because we're doing real engineering, but I kind of set it up with like bumpers and training wheels all the way down. So the way that I kind of structure the course is I provide pretty much all of the real heavy lifting for engineering. And then what they can do for example, like with programming, like they program these machines, they program these pinball machines, but maybe 2/3 of the class is very either completely unfamiliar with programming or only kind of superficially familiar with programming. So ultimately what I do is I provide like 95% of the code that they'll need. And they're able to kind of copy and paste and rearrange those building blocks to create what they need to create. So I give them the tools, and then they reuse those tools to create whatever it is they want. Also, they get to define what success is for their pinball machine, right? So they get to decide what's going to go into their pinball machine, and then they can kind of focus maybe more on the art side of it, or maybe more on the music side of it, or maybe more on the programming side. I have some of the computer science students who are really into the programming side of it, and they develop really complicated rules and stuff like that. So like there's a lot of flexibility in what success is at the end of the day for a pinball machine. They do have some requirements, but I give them pretty much those requirements. And then also, like, we do have a preliminary design proposal that's very early in the semester, and they have to lay out what they're expecting to do. And I always tease them and I say, basically, it's like my job is to crush everyone's hopes and dreams at that point in the semester, because they'll come in with these like extravagant designs, and you know, they've never done any like design work before. And I don't say like, oh, this is terrible. I say, this is awesome, actually. And it would be great if we can do that, but we only have one semester. So maybe we can scale it back to this, focus on this. And then if you really get it and it's doing great, then you can add on and go on from there. Because yeah, again, we do programming, we do electronics, we do mechanical design, we do fabrication, and that's a lot to squeeze into one semester. Yeah. Now, also, I've evolved the course a little bit, and I have a whole library of tutorial videos now that the students can watch outside of class. So they watch those outside of class. We hold lecture in a lab, but we try to spend most of that time actually building and doing things. So I'm there to help out along the way. So it's evolved, and I feel like last time I teach it is always the best time I teach it. So like we're definitely, I found a good sweet spot in the difficulty.
So the next question that I have is, how do you assess learning? This is also a very common question that we get. How do you assess learning, and what types of assignments and projects do you assign in your honor seminar?
I usually have a variety of assignments during the semester, and then I ask the students to assemble evidence from these different assignments into a portfolio. So there are things, there are some writing reflections, that is something that I developed with Kimber Andrews in our Dance in the City course called a creative reflection. And that's, we assign one student for each class to, after the class, present a summary, a creative summary of what was experienced the day before. So it's both a review and a summary, and it's usually rendered in some creative expression. We've had video, we had poetry, we had infographics, and that is shared with all the students. So that's a very interesting way to remember. But then the students have to take one artifact from each week and rebuild their experience through the course leading up to a reflection paper. So they essentially tell us what they've learned. And in the first time we did that, we just gathered this and graded ourselves. And then we learned that that was so valuable that we had the students turn it in prior to finals week. And then on finals week, we met with them individually and had a conversation. And that was also incredibly revealing about what the course meant to them. And the great thing is, you can't AI your way out of it. So I think authentic assessment is always one in which artificial intelligence has nothing on it, right? The students really have to write with their voice and think with their own heads.
So for my class, it's very much you know, kind of a fabrication course. Like we are building a device, right? We are building pinball machines, and the way the course is set up, every 2 or 3 weeks they have a capability milestone. So I lay out these milestones that they have to achieve in functionality of their pinball machine. So, you know, basically we start off saying like, can we get a flipper to flip? And we go through and I teach them how to do the programming, the electronics of doing that. And then in like 2 weeks, they have basically, I have a fairly detailed grading rubric of different levels of capability of hopefully where they're at. And they have to show like that works. And then they have to do a very short report on that. So there's kind of these intermediate milestones that keep them on track and guide the progression of creating a complete machine. And then there's 2 big reports. There's that preliminary design report earlier in the semester where they lay out the grand vision of what their pinball machine is going to do and how they're going to do it. And then there's a final report that is actually about the final pinball machine that they got to do. And then it's optional, but like last year, we didn't go to Chicago, but there's a local pinball show called Cincinnati in December. It's out at Eastgate. And the students had an option of taking their complete machines and putting them on display at that pinball show. So technically, they're not graded on that, but it is an opportunity for them, again, to kind of do like a final presentation. It's the week, conveniently, it's the weekend before finals, sort of conveniently. I mean, it's good and bad, but classes are done and they get to come out and put their machines on display for all the other pinball nerds like me. So it's really cool.
I'll just chime in quickly with my class. We do different assignments. And so a lot of these are reflective. So I had mentioned the obituary. We do that like, well, we did it Tuesday. And that's really a shocker because a lot of students haven't thought about their own death. And so that, of course, is graded a little bit. But again, we don't really care about the grades. It's sort of like what Flavia says, it's the experience that's more important. But then we ask them to redo it at the end of the class. And that's interesting because you see it change. And then we also have them at the end do a eulogy and then also a bucket list of things that they want to have achieved before they pass away. The last part that's really important for me is I want them to learn from each other. More so than just stand there and listen to me talk. And so everyone in the class comes to the course with their own personal experiences, their own cultural experiences. And so each of the students chooses a culture, sometimes it's a religion, and they do a short little report and then they present it to the rest of the class on what that is. So I encourage students to pick something that is outside of their wheelhouse. That makes them a little bit more, something they don't know. And so I've had different students, study or present on Hinduism, Judaism, all these sorts of different aspects. And we really learn from each other. So in terms of assignments, those are technically all graded, and it's an English class too. So we do a lot of work with the students to make sure that the writing is nice and tight. And in the past, we've actually had that become very helpful. Unfortunately, I had a student who passed away in one of my classes after the class, and her family had known that she was going through, writing this all up, and they contacted us and wanted to have copies of her obituary and her eulogy, and that's what was delivered at her memorial service. So there actually is I think a lot of value to that. So yes, it's an assignment, we have to grade them in some way, but it's the experience that is key.
Yeah, and Teresa, thank you for sharing that. That was a really powerful outcome from your class for the students and that shared experience and that family. There's a great question in the chat. Are credits for the seminars built into the academic curriculum? And I'll put an answer in there. They are in terms of being general education requirements. So every honors seminar is required. We require that you design it so that it meets a general education breadth of knowledge BOK requirement. So social sciences, fine arts, Flavia's class is probably a fine arts. Zach's might be a technology and innovation. Teresa's might be a humanities. I don't remember, but we ask that they're designed so that they meet the learning outcomes in one of those areas so that students can fit them in. Otherwise, they're free electives and most students wouldn't be able to fit them in. So that's a great question. I put a question in the chat. Is there anything for our faculty panelists that you would want to share about how you integrate reflection? You've talked about reflection throughout. Is there anything else that you would want to explicitly say to someone who's preparing an honor seminar proposal about that and trying to think about how to thread reflection throughout?
I would say if you're not sure, if you've never done it before, this is where I was at one point. I had no clue, scientists, we don't reflect. Actually, we do. But ask for examples, seek out help. Like Debbie and I'm sure the panelists, see what other people have done, because oftentimes that will help. spur some ideas that might be appropriate for your course.
Yeah, and I think also sort of change it up. You know, in a way, students are post-COVID really, they have facility in writing their thoughts because they've been communicating online. So sometimes you get like the super long and maybe not to the point reflection. So I change it up. Sometimes it's like specific questions. Sometimes it's a broader thing. Sometimes it's just reflecting back to me. Sometimes it's reflecting on a thread. Sometimes I ask them to go find an image that expresses an idea or a poem or a piece of news. So just get them also thinking that reflection can be, it's just really how we operate as humans, right? So we are just finding a way to capture that as part of the class. And yes, I hope that scientists do reflect.
Another question before our final question is how do you promote an inclusive learning environment in your honor seminar?
Well, oh, you was someone else getting ready to go? All right, I'll go. Well, I mean, I will say, you know, electrical and computer engineering in general, definitely still to this day has some inclusion issues overall. But so my class turns out historically has turned out to be around 50% like female students, which is part of that's the demographics of the honors program, but they're still electing to take this electrical and computer engineering course. And that is extremely high for electrical and computer engineering courses. Like a lot of our courses are typically around like 5 to 10% female students, which is an issue. So like when we started having these higher percentages, we actually did some surveys to try to identify maybe, like I had ideas and I tried to set up the course to be open and inclusion. But one of the main things that came out of that survey is that there were a lot of students who were genuinely interested in electrical and computer engineering, and they were interested in gaming, but typically those courses either are intimidating isn't the right word, but kind of intimidating is the right word, or not welcoming, or they are hostile communities. So I've tried to pose the course again as an opportunity for these students to do creative things, which is one of the positive aspects of the course that has attracted students to it, and to tell their stories. So also pinball industry has some issues historically with some of the art and marketing and the demographics that they're catering towards. They're trying to change that, but there's a lot of themes and stories that haven't been told, right? That haven't been told in pinball, haven't been told in gaming, and just trying to open it up and give people an opportunity to tell the story that's of interest to them, that they may not be able to go to an arcade and find, because over the past 50 years, it's, you know, been targeted towards old white guys, basically, is the current demographic for pinball. So yeah, basically I've tried to give students an opportunity to tell their story, and in a unique media, basically. So
I just want to add another dimension to that, not so much about what I do in the classroom, but prior, and that is leveraging the honors advisors to inform them about the course. For example, in the dance course, there were some expectations about ability level, you know, physical ability, and we designed a course that was inclusive to all levels of ability. So, you know, the honors advisor asked, if somebody's on a wheelchair, they are welcome. If somebody hasn't had any dance background, they are welcome. So really, because they are on the front line of asking the questions that the students are going to ask, so that they have the answers and they can affirm to the students that they are welcome in these spaces.
Yeah, and I just add quickly, I set that up on day one because in our class, we get into some deep topics and I want everyone to respect everyone else's opinions. And so I have that written to my syllabus. We talk about it on day one, the importance of being inclusive and respectful of everyone else in the classroom, especially if they have opinions, thoughts, experiences different from your own. And so far it's worked out really well.
Thank you. Great examples. Final question is, what have we not given you the opportunity to share that you would want to share with faculty who are thinking about developing an honors seminar? What would you, anything you would want to share that hasn't been shared yet?
I think we are sharing among ourselves now.
Well, and for the video audience, so anybody who watches it on video, because this question sometimes gets really fascinating responses from faculty. So yeah, is there anything that you would want people to know or leave them with for anyone who's watching this on video later?
I think for me, it has really elevated my career at UC, both in terms of creating opportunities for me to articulate novel ideas and find new partnerships, and also some level of recognition. I mean, it's a prestigious thing to be selected to teach an honors seminar. We live in a very hierarchical environment in academia. So it's something that has intrinsic and extrinsic value. And it has been one of the highlights of my experience here.
Thank you, Flavia. That's wonderful.
Yeah, I mean, I would say, you know, and similarly, this is my honors course has definitely turned into like probably the funnest part of my job, honestly. Like it started off as kind of, you know, a little side project. It's like, oh, it might be kind of cool to make this a little class. But I have enjoyed making this class more than any other class I've ever taught. Partly because it's so different. I mean, than, you know, a lot of hardcore control theory and math and stuff like that. But also because it's so diverse, like the students are diverse, the material's diverse. You know, it's opened a lot of doors. Like I work with almost every pinball company in the world now. Like I interact with them as part of this course. I've got students working in my research lab who never would have stepped foot in my lab before. And like I'm on sabbatical right now, and I'm working with a arcade company over my sabbatical, which I never would have considered doing 2 years ago, 3 years ago. So yeah, it's been transformative in my academic and professional career.
Awesome.
I would say for me, it's something that gives me great joy and freedom, I think is a good word. I love teaching students, but oftentimes when you're doing the same old classes over and over, I still love those. But it's nice to always be thinking like, okay, in the semester, I get to have my honors course back. And, you know, I get to be meeting people across the university. It's not just students, it's faculty. It's just fun. And then also just to hear other people's courses, like Flavia and Zach. I mean, I'm like, I want to take those courses too. And so it's exciting because you get all energized, especially going through COVID, you know, it was all tough. And sometimes it's hard to remember like why we're in this. And then we're in it for the students, and the honor students will bring their all, you know, and make it worthwhile, I think, at least for me, that's my opinion.
Thank you.